You ever have one of those moments where you're trying to build something new, you come up with what you think is the perfect solution, only to realize you've just created a whole new problem? Well, today we're going to dive into one person's quest to design the perfect meditation technique, and it's a journey into metaphysics that honestly reveals a really universal lesson about balance and what happens when we get it wrong.
So, where does a journey like this even begin? It all started with this one huge question. A spiritual practitioner named Christopher McClure wanted to take three separate ancient systems and somehow weave them together into one single unified practice. I mean, that's a pretty ambitious goal, right? And this one question is what kicked off his entire quest.
His journey kicked off with a hunt for a very specific pattern. The idea was to map this unique flow of energy onto a six-pointed star. But here's the thing. We're not talking about just any old pattern. No, this thing had to follow some super strict, very specific rules.
Okay, so what were these rules? Well, the pattern had to pull off three things, and they were all non-negotiable. First up, it had to map the I Ching hexagrams. Second, it needed to handle a really complex energy flow that moved both side to side and up and down. And finally, the whole thing had to form one single, continuous spiral for this unique practice he was developing called the Star Body Palace Meditation.
And then, boom, he has a breakthrough. He finds a pattern that looks like it checks all the boxes perfectly. He called it the evolution spiral, a counterclockwise path that really seemed to be the answer he'd been searching for.
So let's actually trace this thing out. If you picture that six-pointed star, right? The pattern starts at the base of the triangle that's pointing up, moves over to the right side, then to the left. From there, it jumps over to the left side of the downward pointing triangle, then to the right, and it finishes at the base. It's this clean, six-step, counterclockwise spiral. I mean, on paper, this looked like the golden ticket, the perfect solution.
But you know how these stories go. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, this is where things get interesting. That new pattern, which seems so perfect, actually started creating a pretty significant problem. It introduced this subtle but really powerful imbalance into his whole practice.
And he put it in his really fascinating way himself. He said he was noticing an imbalance, like I was getting to kind of heaven-sighted. I mean, what does that even mean? It's this idea that all the energy was getting, well, top-heavy. It was pulling him upwards, but there was nothing pulling him back down to keep him grounded.
And look, this wasn't just some vague, oh, I feel a bit off kind of thing. This energetic imbalance had a very real physical side effect. He started getting more migraines. And that was the physical proof he just couldn't ignore. The one-way spiral, it just wasn't sustainable. Something had to change.
This is what led to that big aha moment. He realized that to get true balance, a simple one-way loop just wasn't going to cut it. He needed something longer, something more complex. He needed a complete cycle.
He actually came up with a great analogy for this, using music. Think about it. A simple rhythm that just repeats every 4 beats is fine. It works. But it's kind of one-dimensional, right? But a 4-bar phrase in music, that develops over a much longer cycle before it repeats. It creates depth, what he called deeper dimensionality. That's what his meditation needed. It needed its own 4-bar phrase.
So what was the fix? Well, it was actually beautiful in its symmetry. He realized he just had to complete the circuit. He needed to add a reverse, clockwise journey, an involution spiral, to balance out that first counterclockwise evolution spiral.
So this new path, this involution spiral, is basically the mirror image of the first one. It starts at the base of the downward triangle and moves clockwise, creating a full return journey. And when you put them both together, the evolution out and the involution back, now you've got something special, a complete balanced cycle.
Okay, so the new pattern is working. It's balanced, it's powerful, almost too powerful. And that created one last puzzle to solve. How in the world do you handle all that new intensity without getting completely overwhelmed?
The way he described it, this new, longer cycle created a more direct connection between heaven and earth, right there inside his own body. But that came with this feeling of intense pressure. It was a clear sign that, yeah, the energy was potent, but it needed to be managed, you know?
So to deal with this, he turned to a really key concept that you see in a lot of Eastern practices, the Dantian. If you've ever done martial arts or certain types of meditation, you've probably heard of it. It's an energy center, usually located a few inches below your navel, and it's considered the physical center of the body, the perfect anchor for grounding energy.
And that was the final piece of the puzzle. The answer was to root the entire practice, all that intense energy, right in the dantian. By keeping his mind focused on that physical center, he could finally ground everything, balance the physiological effects, and make this incredibly powerful double-cycle meditation sustainable.
So this whole journey to find a pattern for a star reveals a pretty universal truth, doesn't it? A one-way trip can throw everything off balance. But a complete cycle, a path out and a path back, that's what builds a powerful, grounded equilibrium. It really makes you wonder, right? What are the unseen patterns in our own lives that create balance? Or throw it all off?